Now, in the 2024 election, of course, not that long ago now, week and a half ago, there were some pretty stunning results. And amongst them were there were 5 independent candidates who were elected. One of them, of course, was Jeremy Corbyn, the former leader of the Labour Party, who was purged by his successor. But 4 other independent candidates were also elected. Now, this is quite astonishing. Since 1950, only 8 independent candidates have been elected in a competitive election, a general election. I'm excluding Martin Bell. He was an independent candidate. Labour stood down for him. So there were 8 in total since 1950, and 5 of them were elected in this general election. Pretty astonishing. Now, I'm really delighted to be speaking to one of those. I think it's very legitimate to describe a historic victory by Shockat Adam in Leicester South. This was an astonishing result. He overturned the massive whopping majority of Jonathan Ashworth, not any old Labour MP, a shadow cabinet minister, one of Keir Starmer's key allies, who expected to get a plum job in the Labour government. In 2017, his majority was over 26,000. He had 73.6% of the vote. In 2019, despite Labour's bad overall result, he still got 67% of the vote. He got 33,500 votes, a majority of 22,675. Not this time. This election, his majority was overturned by Shockat Adams, who got around 1,000 more votes than him. He did not see that coming. Shockat, it's a big honor to see you. How are you doing?
I'm brilliant. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
It's a big honor. Now, I'm going to talk about, what we'll talk about shortly is, I think, the stuff that's been thrown at you by Jonathan Ashworth, by Labour figures, by the media. And this is really, I think, a really important opportunity for you to be able to give your side of the story, what you would say in response to what the likes of Jonathan Ashworth have been saying. First, just tell me about yourself. I'm really interested, just, who you are. And, you're an optician. Tell me about that, your kind of profession, and you in the community, of course, over in Leicester.
No, thank you so much for the opportunity. As you can imagine, it's been a baptism of fire for me for the past week. It's been more than a whirlwind. It's been an absolute tornado. Look, I'm a local lad. Leicester is my city. It's a city that took me in as a young child at the age of 3 from East Africa. I was born in Malawi, and I grew up in this country from parents, similar story for many immigrants that came from Africa who couldn't speak English, but they were committed. This country gave us a home. And what has happened, this election victory, is really what is so great about this country, the things that I loved growing up about this country, this underdog given this opportunity. I lived in Leicester virtually all my life. I spent some time abroad and some time away. I studied, as you say, I'm an optometrist, but my passion is fighting racism, bigotry, Islamophobia, and all forms of hatred. And that is where I found my grounding in the community for over 12, 13 years, where as a volunteer, I have worked really, really hard within the community, interfaith work, charity work, and making sure that minorities, and in particular communities that don't feel part of the system sometimes, don't get disenfranchised, work with the government, work with political structures, work with the media to make sure their side of the story is always heard. I live with my family. I've got a business in Leicester South. As I say, I own my own optical practices, and it's just been a whirlwind roller coaster, every adjective you can find, journey in the last 6 to 7 months.
So tell me how it came about that you stood. Because, we've seen other independent candidates, they came forward and there was kind of local specific reasons for that. But how did it come about? Why did you put yourself forward? Did you ever imagine you put yourself forward in this way?
No, look, I've never even been a member of a political party in the past. I have, at the very last election, I did support the local candidate for Leicester East. And that was the only direct political experience that I have. But saying that, I have always been politically engaged. In fact, as I said in my previous question as well, I've really helped people to understand how the political system works, how the media works. And I've worked so hard within the community, so I have this real reputation within the community, completely free of charge of anything that requires speaking to the MP or speaking to the media, or if they've been a victim of any form of hate crime, I would be there to assist them as a caseworker or guide them in the right direction. So now, just to answer your question then, this has been a series of events. Okay, so firstly, for me, what happened during Brexit, I really found that very unpalatable, very uncomfortable, in particular the narrative that was being spun by the media, by the Brexiteers, of alienating, of demonizing minorities. And, as a student of history as well, who, it was one of my favorite subjects at school and still study it in my part-time, I know where this ends. When you demonize a community, everybody suffers at the end. And Brexit was really, really an eye-opener for me, that those that were hidden back, who really didn't say what they thought about people, were now coming out in the open, and people being allowed to get away with it as well. The subsequent cost of living crisis, the minorities were always being affected more than anybody else. The poorer got poorer, the richer got richer. And again, this really affected my constituency, my city, and people were really, really suffering. And this went on, and COVID, I was part of a team during COVID that assisted the community, this is the Muslim community I'm speaking about, to arrange funeral support. And we know, while people were practicing the COVID rules with dignity and with respect, the government of the time, I don't need to go into, we all know what was happening there. And there seemed to be this real, chasm between those in power and those on the community, and those on the ground, those what we call ordinary people. And when this happened, what I find that people either become completely disenfranchised from the political system, or they go down a rabbit hole of conspiracy theories. And this is a really, really dangerous place to be, because this chasm grows between those in power and those on the street. And again, like when racism raises its ugly head, everybody suffers. And then finally Gaza happened. And when Gaza happened, this constituency has a very high majority, very high population of Muslims, and also ethically concerned individuals. Over 70% of people wanted a ceasefire. And this seat has been a safe Labour seat, apart from a year from a by-election during the Iraq War, where the Lib Dems held it for about a year. And nothing was coming forward, obviously from the government, but nothing was coming forward from the Labour Party. And we had a Labour MP at the time who remained very, very quiet, very, very quiet for the first 3 to 4 weeks after after October 7th, with the death of thousands and thousands of Palestinians. And it was at that stage people were talking about, our votes have been taken for granted in the past. When we needed our MP to say something, nothing was coming forthright, nothing was coming loud and clear. So we must have a candidate to stand in our constituency. I was then selected to be that candidate after a lot of thought, because, as I say, I run my optical practices. I have a young family. I have a life that I was leading. I have no political experience. But after much thought and deliberation and conversations, I decided to stand.
Now, I'll talk about Gaza shortly, obviously, and it's critical to talk about the genocide being perpetrated by the Israeli state with Western support, and including British arms. But I'm interested in Jonathan Ashworth, I guess, both as him, who's lost the election, but as a kind of case study. I mean, what was how would you describe the relationship he had before this campaign, before Gaza? How was he seen in the community? Was he well regarded? Did he campaign much? Was he visible in the community? How would you describe kind of Jonathan Ashworth as a presence in the constituency?
John was parachuted into one of the safest seats in the country. And as you say, 26,500 in 17, 22,000 in 19. This is the majority I'm talking about, not the number of votes. He had it really comfortable. And Leicester South was a Labour seat, apart from that 1 year during the Iraq War. There was nothing to be done, really. And John was seen as a figure that was invited to lots of events, was respected within the community. It was neither here or neither there, if I'm perfectly honest with you. There was, now during the election period, there was a lot of people who were saying that he was very absent. They've never seen him before. He wasn't available for all constituents. He was seen on national television a lot, but he wasn't grassroots. He wasn't there for the people of Leicester as somebody that they can approach, somebody they can speak to, somebody that was there for them when they really, really needed them. So he wasn't a reviled figure. He wasn't a revered figure. He was just John Ashworth. It's a Labour seat, could be anybody there, and that's how he was seen.
In terms of Gaza, let's just talk about the impact that's had, because and this is often, I mean, the kind of narrative on this is very simplistic often. It's not just British Muslim voters who care about the genocide in Gaza, for example. I'm not Muslim. I care passionately about that genocide. Muslim voters also care about many, many other issues, including many of the same issues that everybody else obviously cares about. But there's no question, of course, there's beyond doubt that given there are so many Palestinian Muslims, although some Christians have also been killed by Israel, that this has naturally a bigger impact in Muslim communities. So I'm just interested in that impact, the impact of Gaza in the last few months, and not just the Conservative position on it, but Labour's position. And I'm interested, for example, in very big moments like when Keir Starmer said to LBC that Israel had the right to cut off water and energy to a civilian population, and then was backed by various Labour shadow cabinet ministers. And then 2 weeks later claimed he'd never said what he had actually said. He denied that he believed Israel ever had the right to cut off any of the essentials of life. We could hear him. We heard what he said. That was just one example. And I'm just interested what impact that's had amongst people in the constituency.
Yeah, as you say, it's affected everybody, not just the Muslim community. And I want to make that very, very clear. I was knocking on doors where there wasn't a Muslim majority in wards, and they were asking me about Gaza, and they were couldn't believe the silence of the Labour Party in particular, or the lack of, clear condemnation of the actions of the Israeli army. And that was across the board. And this is a really, really important point, to label this as just a Muslim-centric concern. This is a humanity concern, and everybody was affected by it. And this is a narrative that really, really has to go out there. Did Gaza play a part? Of course it played a part. But as you said, regardless of a presentation I gave about anything, the things that affect people that are concerned about Gaza, they're affected by everything else. Cost of living, and housing. Housing was the most important thing. I'm a healthcare professional, National Health Service. The environment, very important. Nothing for the youth to do. The lack of business opportunities, etc., etc. These were the things that were really, really impacting the community as well, and the constituencies, regardless of creed, color, religion, everybody across the board. Again, this Gaza was very, very important. There's no denying. But I think Gaza was just a microcosm of, a bigger issue here. This was 70% of the constituency calling for an immediate ceasefire with no semantics. Let's not even talk about, sending Israel to the International Court of Justice, or condemning Benjamin Netanyahu, or stopping arms sales. At that moment in time, in the beginning, we just wanted somebody to say immediate ceasefire. Killing must stop. And nothing came forth. And the trajectory from Keir Starmer's statement on LBC, his shadow cabinet, a couple of members saying exactly the same thing, waiting 2 weeks to make a retraction. People were feeling that they were being fooled. And then we had those council elections. And before that, in fact, there was, headlines on, Keir Starmer can afford to ignore the Muslim vote, etc., etc. When some councillors resigned from up north from the Labour Party and joined independents, etc., and somebody had quoted from the Labour Party that it was like shaking off fleas. Where was the condemnation? Where was the outcry? Where was the, this is not acceptable? Who said these comments? Was there any repercussions? No. So the community felt that the Muslim community have been one of the most committed groups of people to the Labour Party. I think according to the Labour Muslim Network, over 70% en bloc voted for the Labour Party, historically. And now when they felt they really needed a mouthpiece, people are realistic. They know that as a shadow cabinet or a shadow member of parliament, and they can't change the world. But the least you can do is echo what the constituency was feeling, what the people wanted, and they were met with silence. And at the end, it's the silence of your friends and not the words of your enemies that you remember, as according to Martin Luther King.
On that, because before I ask about the campaign and what Jonathan Ashworth has said, and also because it is so important to say that, as you say, this is, other issues came up, and it was voters of different backgrounds who supported you. This point about Islamophobia and the Labour Party, I mean, in the Batley Spen, you mentioned taking off the fleas as just one example. The Batley and Spen by-election, which Labour nearly lost, Labour briefed that they had lost the they'd won the old Conservative vote, but they had lost what they call the Conservative Muslim vote because of anti-Semitism and homophobia. And in 2022, the Labour Muslim Network, which you just mentioned there, they did a poll of Labour Muslim members and supporters. And they asked how well Keir Starmer had, since this publication of a report into Islamophobia, the Labour Party, how well has Sir Keir Starmer handled Islamophobia as the Labour Party leader? 4% said very well, 7% said quite well, 20% neither well nor badly, 18% quite badly, very badly, 46%. I mean, that's got barely any coverage in the Western media. I'm sorry, the British media. I'm one of the only British, I mean, this is not me giving myself a cookie. That's the bare minimum. Who's talks about this? Well, I mean, do you think this is, this lack of kind of like the way the Labour Party is often seen to be treated, the Muslim, or how Muslim voters feel, is voting fodder. That's what you're kind of getting at, isn't it? Voting fodder.
And you've read the Ford report, Owen. I'm sure you've got favour with it. And then there's a hierarchy. Every form of hatred, racism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, that's all entry drugs to all forms of other racism and homophobia, all other form of phobias, etc. These people just do these things on, and Islamophobia is the flavour of the month at the moment. But Islamophobia is not taken seriously. What was the results of the Ford report? What has happened? What have they done?
To be clear, just so everyone knows, Martin Ford QC is a barrister, one of the most prominent black barristers in Britain, who was commissioned by Keir Starmer after leaked messages suggested abuse by Labour officials, and published a report suggesting a hierarchy of racism with, for example, Islamophobia not taken seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're absolutely right. And there was this feeling within, that the Labour Party are taking us for granted. They don't listen to us. They just think we're going to always be there for them. But they've never had a tangible alternative. Are they going to vote for the Tories? A few of them will, but very unlikely. Are they going to go to Reform? No. Did they believe the Lib Dems were going to win? There wasn't really a strong push or a strong candidate in my constituency for them. So then they had an option of the Greens and myself. And because of the work that I have done, because I'm so grassroots, because I'm embedded with businesses and living here virtually all my life and working, there was a tangible option, a tangible alternative. And this is what all members of the community and all constituents took upon themselves, because I worked extremely hard to reach out to as many communities and many members of the constituency. There was 1 month, Owen, where I had over 41 engagements. And this is whilst I was working. This just didn't happen overnight. This wasn't a fluke. This wasn't just some disgruntled individuals. This was a proper campaign, and nobody saw it coming. But, this was for the first time people who had traditionally voted for the Labour Party felt, there is an alternative. And it is for them to understand that you can't ignore the people you're serving.
Before, just quickly, what I'll do is show clips just by Jonathan Ashworth, which you can respond to. But I just wanted to, you raised the point that Gaza was important, but actually other issues also came up as well. So I'm interested in, was a general sense of dissatisfaction with Labour's position on other issues? It was because people were reveling, not that, they were angry with the government, but they were saying Labour's not the alternative we need at the moment. That's what they were saying.
There was two things. Look, when I was canvassing, there was two clear things that came across. One was complete apathy. They're all the same, mate. There's absolutely no point voting for you guys. You say one thing, you do another thing. And one person said it very colourfully, and I'm going to change the terminology. He said, I'd rather put my hand in a bucket of manure, mate, and clap. Never heard that expression before, but he said it colourful. But he said it in a very friendly way, that rather than vote. And that was across the board. People just from the Afro-Caribbean community, there's no point in voting, mate. There's just nothing changes. The white working class community in particular, from those in our most deprived areas, absolutely no point in voting. Why should I vote? Nothing changes. So there's this complete apathy. And we see that in the numbers. We see that in the turnout. And the second thing, which I found really, really surprising, is maybe because of the way I look. You may not be a Tory, mate. I'm not voting for the Tories. And even more surprisingly, I'm not voting for the Labour Party. You better not be from the Labour Party. And it was these people that I spoke to and said, look, I'm just like you. I'm a guy from the street. I grew up around the corner. I'm a local business owner. And I don't believe the established parties, and I'm standing as an independent. And those are the people that got me over the line. Because there's this disenfranchisement, and they just don't trust the established parties. And now they had an option. So it was those two things that came across loud and clear. No study needs to be done about it. I can tell you exactly how this was won.
And that point about turnout, I think, is so key because as a percentage of the overall adult population, so including whether people are registered or not, it was in this election the lowest turnout of any election since the universal suffrage. So I'm just going to show some clips from Jonathan Ashworth and just want to hear what he said. I've done a video already going through these interviews, but it's far better, obviously, to hear your response. So let me just start with him on Sky News with Kay Burley.
I'm obviously disappointed to have lost my constituency in pretty brutal circumstances.
Tell me about it.
I've never known a campaign of such vitriol, such bullying, such intimidation. I've never seen a Member of Parliament, Shockat Adam, get elected on the basis of a foul and obnoxious lie that I was responsible for genocide, that I had the blood of Gazan children on my hands. This was his campaign. I had his supporters bullying and intimidating myself and my key supporters in the streets. And he refuses to condemn it. He's actually gone to ground and he's refusing to answer any questions on this. It's very disrespectful to the people of Leicester South that he's disappeared. But look, there should be no place for bullying and intimidation in politics. Some people have said, oh, don't speak out. It looks like sour grapes. I'm a northern lad. I'm from a different bit of Greater Manchester than you, but we were taught to stand up to bullies, and that's what I'll always do.
Well, I think we can all see what a intensely aggressive and intimidating person you are, Shockat Adam. Just what's your response to? I mean, he said he talked about brutal circumstances. I do think when he's particularly talking about Gaza, MPs talking about the brutal circumstances they're going through. It doesn't sit well with me. I'm not going to lie, but I want to hear your thoughts. He talks about brutal circumstances. He says that he was held responsible for genocide, the blood of Gazan children on his hands, and that your campaign was guilty of bullying and intimidation. And it was, those are his allegations. I just want to hear what's your response to what he says there.
Look, Owen, I may disappoint you. I'm not as combative. I'm not a northern lad. I'm from Leicester. We sit in the middle of the country, and I am a much more balanced individual as a reason for that, due to that fact. Now, he was in power for 13 years. He enjoyed huge majorities. Okay, he's probably a decent bloke. I mean, I was acquainted to him. I didn't know him personally. He has now lost that election, and he didn't see that coming. And that is why he is so resentful and he's so angry. Everybody, as I said to you, nobody expected him to wave a magic wand and peace would prevail over the Middle East. What people wanted was their MP to speak out on their behalf, and they were met with silence. And you know what? People are dying in Gaza as we speak. 2 days ago, another strike killed over 90 people, innocent men, women, and children. They are the real victims. There was no brutality. There was no accusation from myself or my campaign that he had blood on his hands. These are just, it's simply not true. We fought. I was always taught to amplify what you are about, and that's what we did. We talked about the issues that concern the constituency. We talked about how important the situation in Gaza was, and somebody to speak out on their behalf. They know that I'm not going to be able to resolve everything over a weekend, but they know they now have somebody who will speak truth to power and hold the government accountable and work with as many people. There are good people across the board to make sure that happens at the soonest and the quickest opportunity. That's what it is. And there was no intimidation on our part at all. When you are an MP that is so comfortable, sitting on a huge majority, who is absent from his constituents, decides to visit an area, and individuals, I will never condone violent behavior or abusive language or intimidatory behavior, but to get robust questionings. Now, I don't want to demean potholes, because obviously that's important, or parking issues, because that's important. These people were angry because they were seeing, whether we like it or not, according to all human rights organizations, United Nations, many human rights organizations, United Nations, there is a genocide going on. And people, if they are not going to be rightfully angry at that particular moment in time, when as a humanity are we going to be angry? And this is what we were faced with, because he's never faced it before, because he's been so comfortable. This was robust questioning. Yeah. I would be the first one to condemn any form of aggressive behavior. It's not who I am, and I would not condone it. This was robust questioning. That's all it was. And to have lost, he did not just lose it on that. You don't suddenly go from 33,000 votes to 13-something thousand votes over one issue, over one incident. And my campaigners and canvassers were also faced with issues. But you know what? I'm not going to address them because they said things, that doesn't mean John felt them. These are just people who were making racial comments to my campaigners.
So you've got racist comments, so that's really important.
Yeah, I would never vote. I would never vote for it. I'm voting for John. I would never vote for a P word. That John has nothing to do with that. I'm not going to accuse him of anything. These are people that he has no control over.
Well, I have to say it's still horrific to hear that.
It is, but it's one of the reasons why I stood that we have to, become the change that we want to see. And I will be an MP for even that constituent because that's who I am. We have to represent everybody and make that change.
Because he made, obviously, when people say bullying and intimidation, there's a serious allegation. So just to show, as an example, he did a video was posted by Majid Freeman, who posted, bumped into Labour MP John Ashworth, who was canvassing Leicester. Elderly Muslim uncles who previously supported John came out to ask why he abstained from the Palestine ceasefire vote. So he resorted to playing victim by saying we were bullying and intimidating him. Let's just give an example, because this is important because we can see he said bullying and intimidation. Lots of images then come into people's heads, don't they? So it's useful to be able to see this is what he's talking about.
Do you condemn Netanyahu? Yes or no?
You see, I am not going to have these guys.
I'm just a simple question. Do you condemn Netanyahu?
I'm not going to have these guys bullying me off the street.
No one's bullying you. It's a simple question. We're asking you why you abstained for the vote. Yeah, to vote for a ceasefire. It's a simple question. No one's bullying you. If you can't answer the question, say it.
We're not going to have the people intimidate us.
No one's intimidating you. It's a simple question. Why did you abstain? Why did you abstain for the vote for Gaza? It's not a bully. So me asking you why you abstained for the Gaza vote is bullying you. How is that bullying you?
And people of Leicester South.
We have every right to question why you didn't represent us in Parliament.
Streets of Leicester. And if you want these people to win this election, if you want the bullies,
he doesn't want us to ask him why he abstained from the Gaza vote. If you call us asking you why you abstained,
you've got to vote against this.
Why did you abstain from the Gaza vote?
These people don't decide.
Why did you abstain from the Gaza vote?
People bullying,
why? It's not bullying.
Carries on like that. First, it's not your campaign. That's not your campaign, and it's not. I'm just be honest. That's not bullying, intimidation. That's
what does he mean by if you want these people? Not quite sure.
So yeah, he was basically. Well, that is. You see, that is quite important, isn't it? He basically, because he was being approached by some local Muslim constituents asking about a ceasefire, and he didn't want to answer the question.
Local Muslim constituents, they didn't go to see him. He went to see them that particular day.
So he was in there. That was in there. That's just in their community locally,
yeah.
and they came across him.
Yeah.
What do you think? I guess people. I just think it's important it's so important in politics because bullying and intimidation is a problem and it has to be dealt with. And when people say that, they use those terms, they demean the terms. I guess let's just hear finally. I think people are sick of hearing Jonathan Ashworth, maybe, but let's just listen to just him on LBC about this.
A campaign was organised nationally by a national organisation called The Muslim Vote, whose campaign was clear on their website. Punish MPs. That's the words they used.
The word was punish, was it?
Punish MPs. It wasn't, we want to effect change on a set of policy issues. Like many of the policy issues I fought on, whether that's calling for a ceasefire, calling for Palestinian statehood, calling for student finance arrangements for Muslim young people in our constituency. Punish MPs is what the Muslim Vote organisation talked about.
What kind of things happened to you? You sound pretty angry about this.
I was chased down the street, shouted at and screamed at for 45 minutes until I had to seek refuge literally in a vicarage. And they waited for me outside the vicarage. And even when I came out of the vicarage, they were shouting at me with megaphones. Leaflets going around, accusing me of being Genocide John. Anonymous leaflets, all in the name of the successful candidate who won't be able to do anything, who will stand exposed and impotent, not able to effect change, accusing me of genocide, of having blood on my hands. The vitriol
I mean, again, okay, what's your just general thoughts in response to what he said there?
You know, as I'm going to reiterate again, he's very, very upset. He did not see this happen coming, and he is now throwing everything possible at me. Now, for the Muslim Vote, that's an organization that is engaging the minorities and the Muslim community in particular to be part of the political system. And they endorsed many candidates up and down the country, and they weren't all Muslims. And I don't know how big how big or small they are, but they're not a massive organization, and they did not overturn a 22,000 majority. It's simply just not true just to accuse one little organization of doing that. When they use the word, they are holding those MPs accountable that didn't vote for a ceasefire. That's all they meant by that term, that, you know, they did not hold, they're holding those MPs accountable, and they're asking democratically people to vote, which is the cornerstone of Western civilization, right? Let's get people democratically engaged so they don't feel disenfranchised by voting people out on an issue that is very, very important, which is a genocide happening.
And I'll quote, just so people are aware, because it's very misleading what he said. I don't like the intonation, the Muslim vote, as makes it sound sinister, but he said, we're working so that MPs who didn't vote for a ceasefire are punished. And they're talking at the ballot box. Punish politicians at the ballot box. That's a standard.
Yeah, I mean, and with a cross next to the name of the person that you want to put it to, and how, you know, this is democracy. This is how it works. And as I say, because we've never had that challenge before in Leicester South, we find it very, very difficult. You know, the other are personal accusations. You know, I've worked tirelessly as an independent for 6.5 months, 7 months. I've sacrificed personally, financially, mentally. You can't even imagine how much work this was. I get elected on the morning at about 4 o'clock on the 5th of July, and it's a whirlwind. I'm in Parliament at the weekend. I'm being inducted on Sunday, 2 days after my election. I'm an independent. I'm going in now, creating a team, because I have to now be effective. I'm going to work so hard for my constituents across the board. This is what I am doing. I'm not going to come back and hit John with any rebuttals. I have the constituency to care about. I have parliamentary work to do, and I am going about doing that. I'm setting up my team, setting up my offices. This is just so much work. I'm not going to go on media and look and demean myself and attack John personally, and he can say what he likes about me on those terms. People can judge him on that. That's not who I am. I will be judged in 5 years, on the work that I do. And if I don't do a great job, I will be deselected. I won't be voted in, and fair enough. And hopefully I will shake the hand of the person. Hopefully they won't, if somebody beats me, I will shake their hand and say good luck, rather than what happened to me.
Well, what happened? How did he respond when you won?
Well, there was no response whatsoever. I was my name was called out. I made my speech impromptu, as many of you have seen. Then John took the stage. He wasn't called upon the stage, and he decided to make his own exiting speech, which wasn't protocol at that particular election night. People started booing. I came interjected, saying, you know, this individual has served the city of Leicester South for 13 years, and he deserves to say his goodbye speech. In that speech, he made a comment about, you know, how ineffective I'm going to be as an independent, and then he stormed off the stage without saying a word to me at all, or shaking my hands, which is fair enough. That's his prerogative, but it's not something that I would do, and hopefully I would have a lot more decorum about it.
I mean, just a couple of things, because I just wanted to, again, because it strikes me there's a bit of misconstruing by him going on in that what people object to is he didn't vote for a ceasefire in November. Labour only belatedly voted for a ceasefire 4 months in, after tens of thousands had already been killed. But they did so by gutting the SNP motion, which held Israel responsible for collective punishment. That would mean actions, not deeds. They got that stripped away. They don't support ending arms sales. They have purged MPs who've spoken out. They have, as you said, described predominantly Muslim councillors leaving as shaking off the fleas. I mean, you know, I could go on. There's, you know, they didn't support the South Africa's case at the International Court of Justice and called unhelpful. When funding to UNRWA, the main humanitarian agency in Gaza, was pulled, they legitimised that. Lisa Nandy did it. I mean, I could go on. Do you think there's an issue here? They're just not. There's a slight dishonesty there. He's saying, I'm being held responsible because I am committing genocide, but that's not actually. It's the opposition didn't hold the government to account and allowed the government, therefore, to give Israel a blank check. You see what I mean?
Absolutely. They weren't robust enough, and they weren't echoing the sentiments of the constituents. And this is what people wanted. They wanted a lot more of a robust challenge of what was happening, not, working with wordings and semantics and flirting around the issue. They wanted clear and concise language. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago on LBC, do you condemn Benjamin Netanyahu? You've seen the interview. There was, we condemn some cabinet ministers. No, do you condemn? That's what people wanted. They wanted a clear answer. They wanted a clear answer, as Keir Starmer gave when somebody put some custard powder on Stonehenge and said these people should face the full force of the law. They wanted clear answers on exactly the same thing that was happening as a genocide. They wanted somebody to speak clearly and concisely. People don't understand parliamentary language. They want clear language. And this is what was missing. And this is why they didn't vote for the Labour Party in Leicester South.
And just finally then, I'm interested just the disconnect generally that, other Labour, another shadow cabinet minister lost their seat to a Green MP. Wes Streeting, the now health secretary, nearly lost his seat to Liam Mohammed, a 23-year-old British Palestinian candidate. I went there, followed her campaign. I was really struck. There was huge energy there. I thought something was going on. Wes Streeting didn't see that coming. He didn't see that at all. He wasn't doing some big campaign in his constituency whatsoever. He nearly lost by 500 votes. Again, a very big majority. I'm just interested kind of what that says about MPs being disconnected from their constituency and what you're going to do differently. Because he's saying, Jonathan Ashworth keeps saying you'll be impotent. Freud would have a field day with this guy. He keeps saying that these independent MPs, they'll be impotent. They won't get anything done. Basically suggesting the implication is only a Labour minister. Unless you have a Labour minister as your MP, it's a waste of time. I mean, that's basically his suggestion. So I'm interested in kind of what you think about what Labour MPs, they don't know their own constituency by the looks of things. He didn't see it coming. And, what you think about where he goes, well, you'll be an impotent, you can't do anything.
I'm in Parliament now. I'm not the only one. There's 5 independent MPs. There are some incredible colleagues in the Green Party, the SNP Party, Lib Dems, and some good Labour MPs as well. I'm not partisan in that aspect, in the sense that I will work with everybody and anybody for the right causes, and together coalesce and in coalition, we will hold the government accountable, and we will make sure I will work not to save my position in the cabinet, not to please my leader. My only answerable to the constituents of the city of Leicester. And look, nobody thought I could win. And before that, I suspect I was just that optician, who's going to win this. We made this happen. I support Leicester City. I'm a season ticket holder. The first game I went to, Gary Lineker was on the bench. I might just give my age away there. Yeah. And we all know what Leicester City did. Miracles of all miracles, winning the Premier League. Judge me by my actions, and I will work extremely hard. I'm going to be accessible. I'm going to be visible, and I'm going to be a constituent MP, and I will hold the government accountable in Westminster, and I will be accountable to my constituents in the city of Leicester South.
Shockat, it's been a big honour. I think you've given very clear, direct answers. I hope people can see you've had the opportunity to respond to what's been thrown at you. I think people can... I hope people judge for themselves the tone of Jonathan Ashworth and what he said and how you've come across, how you've presented your answers. So do share this video, everyone. Press like, subscribe. Get the word out. But Shockat, thanks so much for joining us, and it will be really fascinating to see what you'll be doing as the independent MP for your constituency. Yeah,
thank you so much for the opportunity. Always keep me accountable, and that's what I will be, and I would expect that. But judge me by my results. But you can be assured you will have a straightforward, honest MP always available for you.
Brilliant stuff. Cheers, Shockat.
Thank you.